Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Would you come on in here and sit down with me? And let's open our Bibles up today as we look at some fresh and delicious Bible study here in Psalm 26. I'm so glad to have you with me. I am honored that you are here with me. It is my great pleasure to teach from the Psalms. It's my great pleasure to join you in studying the Psalms because I'm still just as much a student as anybody else. So yesterday we read through the first 3 verses in Psalm 26. I want to go back and reread verse 3. So we're going to read 3, 4, and 5 today. And you'll see my reason here in just a moment. Verse 3. For thy loving kindness is before mine eyes, and I have walked in thy truth. I have not sat with vain persons, neither will I go in with dissemblers. I have hated the congregation of evildoers, and will not sit with the wicked. All right, so that's verses 3, 4, and 5. Now, the first thing you notice, well, at least I hope you notice, is that we have turned from request to confession. He's telling the Lord. Now again, remember, this is in his prayer closet, so we're like the little fly on the wall. We're listening to David as he speaks to the Lord, which, I mean, when we have this, why wouldn't this be a lesson for us about prayer? So he's asked the Lord there in those first 3 verses to judge me, examine me, prove me, try me, and set my eyes, set them on truth, for I've walked in truth. Now here, in verse 3, we begin that idea of his confession. Now, we had some of it there in verse 1. For I, even I, walk in my integrity, and in the Lord I trust, I will not slip. That's a beautiful confession, and it connects us to what he expands on here in verses 3b, 4, and 5, and actually goes down to verse 8. This whole idea of his confession of faith. Notice also, right there in verse 3, we have, I have walked in thy truth. The Hebrew verb here is a reflexive verb, and it means that I have caused myself to walk. I've caused myself to walk in thy truth. This is a verb that's used of Abraham. It's a verb that's used of Job. This is now used here of David, by David. I have caused myself. So the idea is that David has so focused on his devotion that he is excluding other things from life so that he can walk in the very truth of God. And then notice what he says. And this takes us right back to Psalm 1. I have not dwelt with men of falsehood, with vain persons. Or there in verse 4. I have not sat with vain persons, neither will I go with dissemblers. I have hated the congregation of evildoers, will not sit with the wicked. You remember Psalm 1? Blessed is the man who, and then we have that progression. He does not walk with, he does not stand in the presence of, he does not sit with. Again, we have it right here in these verses. I have not sat with, I don't go with, I have hated the congregation of evildoers, I will not sit with the wicked. Yeah. So it's David saying exactly what was said there in Psalm 1, and now he's saying, I'm doing this very thing. So David is describing himself as the blessed man. Blessed is the man who doesn't do these things. David says, well, that's me because I've done them. And it all began with verse 3. I have caused myself to walk in truth. When you're walking in truth, that again, take us back to Psalm 1. What does that blessed man do who doesn't walk, stand, and sit in the presence of the scorners? What does he do? He meditates on the word of God day and night. Well, this is what David is saying here. I've caused myself to walk in truth. How do you do that? Well, you meditate on it. You can't put feet to what you don't know. And so he's meditated on the truth of God, the word of God, the law of God. Therefore, he understands how he should relate to these other people. It's really beautiful, this confession is. How many of us can make it? How many of us are that focused on our devotion? How many of us are that focused on our Christian walk? We need to be. Now, of course, the unregenerate man can't say this, and the unregenerate man can't do this because he's dead in trespasses and sins. He's completely passive. He can't make a good spiritual decision. But David can, because David knows the Lord. He actually tells us that, in the Lord I trust, there in that very first verse. So we know who he is. He's a believer. Yeah, he's a believer, and this is why he's able to make this confession. But against this confession, remember, we must measure that first section. Examine me, prove me, try me. Examine me, prove me, try me, test me. All of those things David has said because he wants to continue to walk in the truth. Okay, join me again tomorrow, and we're going to look at verses 6, 7, and 8 here on Daily Dose Radio.